Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Julie Mann. I am a professional network marketer, an actor, and an EFT practitioner. And today I'm really delighted because I'm joined by Susi Vine. Hi, Susi.
Hello, happy to be with you.
Great to see you. So Susi works as a stress resolution coach and also a holistic health practitioner. So I think a good place to start, Susi, would be just to ask you, when you were growing up, were you growing up in a healthy, stress-free home?
You know, we are the product of our homes, aren't we? My mother was a nurse. She was a labor and delivery nurse for 40 years. So she worked in, I don't know, in Britain, if it's the same names, we assume we speak the same language, but there are nuances. So she was helping mothers deliver their babies. She worked night shifts. It was a really stressful occupation. In fact, when I was young, she said, when you grow up, be anything you want. If you go into medicine, I'll disown you. So I went into theater. And that was the first step of, I've done a number of different things. As you know, people who are drawn to theater and the arts were kind of multi-potentialites. And so I've done a lot of different things in the 25 years since I left college, but in the last 5, I really brought my focus back to holistic health. So it only took me until I was about 40 to say, Mom, I really think I need to address some of these health issues that are going on.
She hasn't disowned you.
She hasn't. In fact, she's a terrific client of mine.
Fabulous. So what had you realized then that holistic health was important?
Well, in seeing, as a child, I could see how stressed she was. But when you're young, you don't have that context, right? We don't have the tools to process all of this. But as I got older, and in the career I did immediately before I changed to this focus, I was working with clients in their 80s and 90s and seeing the end result of living a life, whatever lifestyle choices we make, and stress has been so just accepted. Here in the States, we kind of wear stress as a badge of honor, how many extra hours we put in, eating lunch at the desk, all of that, right? Kind of this stoicism that we like to show off. And being able to see the end result. And as we become more aware of how stress really lays the foundation for so many of these chronic diseases, I decided selfishly, I need to work upstream. I need to solve this now so I have more choices and can remain independent as I get older. And that really lit a fire for me to get this message out, because it's easier to make small changes than a big course correction when we're facing the health issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you miss the acting, the theater,
Well, I used to work backstage. When I would audition in high school, I wasn't cast very regularly. I started doing makeup. When I worked professionally, I painted sets and built the hand props. And I loved that creative problem solving. I loved the community. As you know, people who are drawn to the theater are so unique and talented and insightful. So I miss that community. I think the really exciting work happens in smaller production companies and independent productions. So I wasn't as much a part of that. If that had been really my lifestyle, I might miss it more so. But it was working in the shops and working with the chemicals in the shops that started to affect my health. And that's why I initially started to change direction and decide what else I could be when I grow up. So I pay a lot of attention to the environment we live in. And as you know, with the work that you do, what we put on our body, what we put on our skin, what we use in our homes has such a huge impact on our health. And a lot of people don't think of environmental stresses, but they have a huge effect on us too.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about your work a little bit. So I know that you actually say you help your clients simplify living by empowering them to transform their relationship with stress. What do you mean by that, Susi?
Well, I think, and there's always the question, is it nature or is it nurture? Are some people just designed to handle stress more easily? Some people are just triggered and easily overwhelmed and really avoid change. All of that is a stressor that they try to resist. And I think we take a lot from what we're modeled when we're young, our parents, and the way that we see people handle stress. But what's really exciting is, and now they're doing more research and looking into this, that the way that we perceive stress, it's a matter of mindset, can have everything to do with the outcome. So if we can stop, if we can recognize that it's up to us, we can choose to see that stress is an opportunity to demonstrate ourselves rather than a threat that, is overwhelming and sometimes debilitating. That's when it has that physical impact of stress. But it actually immediately changes the way we physically respond when we change our mindset. And so that's how simple might be a bit optimistic in terms of the way some people might view it. But as soon as you start recognizing how much power we have, that's what's really exciting. Then we get to choose how we're going to respond in different situations.
Absolutely, I totally believe that. So you actually say there are 3 types of stress. Now you mentioned environment, I guess that's one of them. Will you tell us, what are those 3 types of stress?
Yes, so there's some overlap, but I like to kind of distill it down into environmental, as I mentioned already, emotional and physical. So, and you can already see too, in what I was just saying, the emotional way that we respond to stress affects our physical body because it's all connected. We think that that might be a woo-woo state of mind, digging into the energy of things, but it's so true. Our emotions definitely have an impact on our physical well-being.
Absolutely. So what would you say is the impact of not addressing that stress?
Well, I think as I mentioned, here in the States, it's kind of become a societal thing to think that work is supposed to be stressful, that life is supposed to be hard. And over time, it drains your resilience. We're designed to be healthy, to come back into balance. Homeostasis is this beautiful thing that our bodies can come back to if we give it what it needs, if we have the right food, if we move our bodies and have good activity, if we get good sleep. I mean, it's pretty simple. It tends to feel complicated because there's always the latest, greatest diet, and you have to do this, all of these new experts weighing in. And it tends to overcomplicate things. But if we keep it really simple and just come back to what supports our resilience, then that just helps us have less health impact over the long term. And that's what leads to that chronic disease state. Stress can lay the foundation for heart disease, for diabetes. It changes the way our body keeps the blood sugar balanced. And all of these other things, even some types of cancer. There's been research done into adverse childhood events, the ACEs study. Some people might be familiar with that. And they've seen in research and following children who had stressful experiences, perhaps abuse, losing a parent, something like that. But even emotional situations, bullying and emotional abuse, can have impact and make people much more likely to have these chronic diseases. And so that's why I think I'm here to tell anybody who will listen that if we become more empowered in how we recognize stress, if we don't just try to ignore it or stuff it, put it aside because there's no time, it's not appropriate, it's hard to find space to work through these difficult emotions. But when we do, and we free ourselves of that weight, we relieve ourselves of that stress, then we can be more resilient and stay healthy.
Brilliant. How do you actually work with your clients?
So what I love to do is initially take a look at those 3 aspects of stress, just to see where little things they might have been tolerating. We can take those down, turn down the volume a little bit, make sure that their home environment is healthy, that the air quality is good. That's one of the primary health concerns as recognized by the environmental agency here in the US. They're really paying attention to indoor air quality. So if we can turn down the volume on those stressors, then we have more capacity. So I start with that. And I also love to start taking a look at where mindset might be holding people back. If they feel like stress is threatening or debilitating, they like to call it in the research that they're doing. So we can start changing their mindset and helping people open up to the opportunities of being more empowered, that flow state that people love to work in, that athletes reach their absolute peak potential within, and business people work for hours and time just seems to fall away. They're in the zone. That doesn't come from having zero stress. There are good benefits to having stress. So when we start to use it to our advantage, then that starts to build that momentum and that energy that we feel we're up to that challenge.
Sounds brilliant. Are you talking about working with your clients with little changes?
Yes, absolutely. Because I think that trying to change a lot, doing a complete lifestyle overhaul is overwhelming. It's like the New Year's resolution that doesn't even last until last week, right? Those are already out the window. So if you make little changes, and I love to be a cheerleader, if you celebrate staying on top of that, staying tuned into it, making every little bit of progress, it starts to lower the stress load. And then we have a little bit more capacity to add one more change, to upgrade one more habit. And that's when that momentum starts building. And that's really exciting because people feel so proud of themselves. This thing that felt overwhelming or complicated and they didn't have time to sort it out becomes less and less of an issue.
Brilliant. And you actually can't underestimate that feeling of being proud. I mean, what's better than that,
Right, exactly. Then you're just inspired to see what else you can do, as opposed to a lot of people really struggle with this inner voice, this critic that seems to come around and say, oh, but you've tried that before and it didn't work. Who do you think you are to take on this change or ask for that promotion or something like that? And it kind of like those stress patterns we saw when we were young. It might be the voice of a parent who was looking out for us, or a teacher who thought we were overextending ourselves. We get these influences that start to put a lid on us. And as we start to recognize that that voice doesn't know everything, it's trying to protect us perhaps, or help us, but we can answer that without conflicting with it, without trying to hit the mute button like we do sometimes with those heavier emotions, and say, I recognize that. And this time we're going to try it and see if we can prove that wrong. So let's expand our horizons a little bit, and have that more engaged approach, as opposed to feeling like we have to force ourselves through, that energy just doesn't serve us, doesn't keep us motivated.
Yeah, and absolutely. We've got to work with our inner selves, haven't we? Because actually it's the unconscious that's running the show, really, isn't it? And if we don't work
Absolutely.
with it and kind of become curious about it, then we're going to keep doing the same old thing. So there'll probably be lots of people watching, Susie, who are feeling really stressed out. So have you got any kind of, any simple things that they could start to do that might impact right now?
Yes. It's been a little stressful. It's been a lot stressful. And I know people were thinking, oh, let's put 2020 behind us and 2021 is a new year. We'll turn the page. And we're still working through a lot of the same things. But it's a great opportunity to really tune into what nourishes us, what helps us feel fortified and stronger. You can't pour from an empty cup. So, mothers especially tend to give and put themselves at the end of the list. When the schedule gets crowded, we take our self-care and our exercise, we become less of a priority. So that's the one thing that I love to recommend is remember that you have to take care of yourself. They say on the airplane, you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help anybody else. And I don't, it's not about all of the things we should be doing. So I like to bring it down to, choose the one area where you feel you could use a little bit more support. If you've been eating convenience foods because it's hard to get out, it's hard to shop these days, but look at how you can bring more greens and nutrition in to nourish your cells so that you can have a little bit more energy, right? There's that starting to turn the tide and give yourself a little bit more margin. If you have trouble sleeping, I've got some great tools that I love to share with people, but it's not fun to change our sleeping habits, but starting to tune that up will really reset everything. Sleep addresses so many different issues, physical, emotional, all of that, really fundamental for resilience. Or exercise. So those three foundations, choose one area where maybe you've let that slide, get out for a 10-minute walk every day. If you can, take your umbrella. What do you call umbrella? I lost my British conversion.
I think we call it an umbrella. Brolly.
Oh, great.
Brolly.
Brawling. In Seattle, they call it a bumbershoot. Yeah. So I know I love jargon. I love speech. I love to see what everyone talks about. So yeah, take your brolly out of the boot and help yourself out in the rain. And, just look for opportunities wherever you can to just come back to those basics and really be able to take care of yourself. I'm sorry, I got you fired up with that last
Yeah,
one.
just a little cough. I guess the other thing is that once people start to see a difference by making a small change,
Right.
they want to make more, don't they? So
Exactly. And it is, it feels so complex. Oh, I'm going to change what I'm eating. Well, what should I do? Should it be, again, I don't know if these trends are as big there where you are in the aisles as here in the States, but should I eat the paleo diet or ketogenic diet, or should I be vegan? We have to kind of turn down the volume on some things and start tuning into what our body responds well to. A lot of us have forgotten how to read those cues. And I tell a lot of my clients, the body will issue requests, but if we're not listening, it'll start issuing demands. And that's when we're really sidelined, and it's never convenient to have to try to do that transformation and bring yourself back to health.
it's very easy, isn't it, to get stuck in our heads, but really when we kind of drop down into our body, it's saying something completely different. What's going on up here is often an old message, and we know all that. It's a bit dull most of the time, but actually what's going on in the body is really much more interesting and much more in line with, like you say, with what we need. So everyone's talking now about this work-life balance thing and striving for that. Is that something you have?
It is something I strive for as well. I hear people say all the time, it's impossible to have that balance, right? Kind of as a defense, right? They don't feel like they have it, therefore it's not possible to have work-life balance. Give up, you'll never get there. I think that struggle comes from looking at what we think other people have done to achieve that work-life balance. Because we have to remember, we're only getting that filtered perspective. We don't know what they're doing or how they really feel about their own level of balance. So whatever works for us, if you're a working mom and you're out of the house, but that feeds your soul, you love the work that you do, then there are different ways. Balance looks different in the time and the quality of that time that you spend with your kids and the way you take care of your family. You can bring in more resources to take care of some of that stuff and free up the time. So I think it's important to give ourselves permission to, again, tuning into what helps us feel more balanced. Is it supporting ourselves with more sleep? Sometimes people can go with a little less sleep if they turn up the support in other areas. I don't recommend it, but whatever brings that balance in for ourselves. So I think it's important not to give up on that pursuit.
Love that. I know you've got a podcast, and I love the name of it, Happy Fight Podcast. How on earth did that come about?
Well, I came across a couple of other podcasts that had unique names. I wanted to kind of set it apart. There are a lot more podcasts now really focusing on the topic of happiness, and which I think is terrific. And everyone has a different approach, so whatever resonates. But Happified, I think, is just, we have to give ourselves permission to really pursue happiness. Sometimes it feels a little bit selfish. I used to see on bumper stickers, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. And I think that it's not selfish to put our happiness forward. In fact, in some of this research that they're doing, they're finding that people who rate themselves as happy are more socially engaged in their community and in the things that are going on in the world. I think it's because they put such a value on happiness. They think that everyone deserves it. And it affects your health. It makes us more successful in the work that we do because we're more confident. We connect more easily with people. It actually makes us, there was research done that doctors who are in a positive mindset were almost 20% more successful in making diagnoses. You wouldn't think that would be at all related, but so it's really empowering to recognize that happiness is worthwhile. It supports our health and our mindset, and it just makes life a lot more fun.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's down to each of us to find what it is that makes us happy. And what I love about the name of your podcast is that, unlike saying the happiness podcast, the Happyfied podcast, it's already done. You're already happyfied. You already, have some idea of how to make yourself happy.
Yes, the act of being happy.
Yes, absolutely. So what makes you happy, Susie?
I love connecting the dots, and that's what I have so much fun with now. And connecting that might mean information, taking research and this and kind of making those connections and then distilling it so that somebody else might see those same insights that I make. And I love connecting people. Feeling isolated and lonely is it was a pandemic before we had a pandemic, and now it's gone to a new level, right? Because we're living behind screens, but there are ways that we can still choose to make connections. And that is so important also for health. When we fall into that pattern of isolation or withdrawing from support, it does start to affect our health too. So I love being able to build community. And so that's why another aspect of the work that I do is I've started a membership so that you can be in community with people who have the same goals, who are recognizing that self-care is important, that our health is and our happiness are our right. We don't have to sit back and look to outside of ourselves for solutions. We can tune in and see what feeds us and nourishes our soul and start moving, becoming our own advocates. So.
I absolutely love that. So I will put all your links beneath this video. But before we go, is there anything else you'd really like to say?
Oh, well, you've let me just run on. We covered some really great ground. I think that, just helping people recognize, as I was just saying, how much power we have to choose our mindset. And I don't want to make it sound like, well, we should be happy, so let's just put on a happy face when it's not authentic. It doesn't serve us. So tune into what it is that does make you happy and start calling in more of that. If it's walks in nature, if it's watching funny movies and comedy, if that's all it takes to get us laughing, then that moves us into that energy. And I think that's an upward momentum, a spiral of energy that can help us carry through even these can be difficult times.
Me too. Susi Vine, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.